Hello, 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 everyone. We're here. I'm so excited to, well, I don't really get to see anyone but Shannon and Leesa Smith, but we're so excited that you guys are here. We are talking about the June Barnes & Noble Book Club pick. I'm Miwa Messer. I'm the producer and host of Poured Over. Shannon DeVito is our director of books, and Leesa Smith is the woman of the hour. She's the author of Half Blown Rose, which is our June book club pick. Couple of things before we start, though. Remember, this is a conversation with lots of spoilers because I am dying to know lots and lots and lots of stuff. So there will be spoilers. If that's not your thing, just be prepared. This is a book discussion group, folks. The other thing is, too, if you would like, feel free to drop your questions in the chat, or you can use the Q&A module, which is at the bottom of your page, and you can drop your, oh, hello, Zara Farda, who's very excited for book club. We're very excited to have you here. Go ahead and use that, or drop your questions into the chat. But before we really get going, Shannon, I know why you picked Half Blown Rose for book club, but I think our participants would really like to know how we got here.
As soon as I read this book, which was about a year ago now, I fell in love with the idea of Paris as a character. Lisa's way with writing, the lyrical ability, it kind of just wraps you in this warm blanket and you just immediately start to relate to these characters going through massive life changes in this absolutely stunning setting. I knew all the things about art, travel, and love, made this kind of the perfect intimate storytelling take on what we, do for book club, which warrants a lot of, there's so many things that happen in this and so many things that don't, that kind of warrant really good questions and discussion. So I had to do it, especially in the summer months. I mean, it's the perfect summer getaway.
Wow. So Leesa, I'm one of the people who could not put the book down at all. I mean, tore right through it, but I have a question for you. How did Half Blown Rose start for you as the writer?
Yeah, well, thank you so much for just your kindness. It's so it's a lot. I use overwhelming in a really great way because I can't think of another way to say it, because it's just really amazing to write this book during the pandemic at my kitchen table and to be talking to so many people around it now about it now. It's really cool. Yeah, it started for me with Vincent. It starts so often, my book starts so often with my character. So my character Vincent, and then what are we gonna do with her, right? I love her. I know who she is. We need to put her in something. We need to give her a lot of stuff to do, and not so much stuff to do, which is what I've done with her, so she can have free time to wander the streets of Paris. But we had just returned from Paris, a trip to Paris, my first time, a little bit right before the world shut down. And I just really wanted to get back there. So I wanted to put Vincent in Paris, give her a reason to be there, and surround her with people who were going to make her life really interesting for this year that she's taken, to sort of figure out what she wants to do for the rest of her life.
Rest of her life? That's a lot, Leesa. That's a lot.
Yeah.
Okay, but now we know Vincent showed up first. I will say she's my favorite. So much I love about this character. So much I love about this character. But I want to talk about the title for a second, because it does play off of her husband Killian's novel, which is more than autobiographical. It's straight up autofiction. And it also is called Half Blown Rose.
Right. So the title Half Blown Rose, I actually took it from Jane Eyre, which is one of my favorite books by Charlotte Bronte. And it says, he gathered a half-blown rose, the first on the bush, and offered it to me. I just really thought the words were so beautiful. And the first time I heard it, listening to the audiobook version, I'd read it plenty of times, but listened to the audiobook, and I heard Half Blown Rose and my feet stopped. So, and I was on a walk and my feet actually stopped because the words were just so beautiful, and I wrote them down. And but then the more I thought about it, the more I connected it so much. The book is filled with liminal spaces, and I speak of those often. So the book is filled with airplanes and airports and trains and rental cars and places that aren't meant to last. Vincent she went to Paris to escape her frustration with Killian writing a book about their lives, and divulging secrets that he hadn't bothered to tell her. And she's in a liminal spot. It's not going to last. And so I really wanted to explore those spaces of in between. A half-blown rose is in between as well, which I really loved. It's not a full-blown rose. It's not a bud. It's something in the middle, something on the edge of something. And I speak often about arrested beauty, like beauty arrested, like something, we're pressing pause and we're staying there for just a little bit longer. And I wanted the whole entire book to take place in that pause. It's also a phrase that is really important to Vincent. And so Killian, instead of thinking of a phrase of his own to use, he starts out the betrayal by just stealing her tattoo. She has it on her shoulder, and stealing something she really loves, a phrase that really she has taken on as her own. He swipes it, and there the betrayal begins, right?
And Shannon, you and I talked a lot about the structure of this book early on before we'd sent it out into the world. But I want to talk to both of you about this, because one of the things I love, and talk about a liminal space, right, is using all of these different techniques. You've got text, you've got emails, you've got letters, you've got playlists, which are very, very revealing, right?
Right.
And screenplay format, which if you think about it, you've got to strip a screenplay, you've got to strip everything out. It's action, 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 action. So let's talk about structure for a second. Do you have a favorite moment, Shannon, of where the structure really connected for you?
It connected all the way through because there were so many different pieces that just created the layers of the narrative for me, especially the playlists. I connect so much to music. I immediately went to Spotify and saw the playlists and went through and put those. It really kind of adds a different experience to it. But for me, and this is going to be controversial, it was the way that the end was. Like, that's where I was like, yes. And I know that's controversial because I know some people have gotten to the ending and been like, what?
Right.
Why? Like, this is not clear. But for me, it was perfect. And I think the using the screenplay, using the pieces of that was perfect. So that structure really, I think, made it kind of stand out as an escapist novel in so many of the fiction that I read, which is why I kind of related to it so much.
Wow.
Leesa, do you have a favorite moment where suddenly, the structure really mattered for that exact moment in time?
I can't say a favorite, but when we talk about the playlist, I really love, I really wanted to introduce them as a normal part of Vincent's life. I wanted the book to be as immersive as possible, meaning that the reader could actually, if they wanted to, put the book down and go listen to the playlist, or turn the playlist on while they were reading the book. So I wanted them to be fully immersed in the book. And an important moment of that is when Vincent and Lou, the young man she begins flirting with, they start sending songs back and forth to each other. She sends him a rather racy song that she immediately regrets. She has to go lie down like an Austin heroine, which is what I say, but she actually has to go to her fainting couch / bed and really process what she's done, because she can't really turn back from that. And so she sends him a song, he sends her a song, they go back and forth. And then the song, I talk about those songs in there. And so it's something like where words were failing them, that's when they picked up these songs. They could talk to each other through those words, through those sounds. Even Lou is like, sometimes there are sounds here that aren't into words, and that's kind of how I feel about these electronic stutters he's using. And so the reason I put them where I put them is because it's where I want the reader to sort of pause and just imagine Vincent in this space and how she would be feeling, even when I couldn't, even as the writer, put what she was feeling into words.
One of the things I love too is that Vincent's dad is also a musician.
Right.
And Tully, this brings me to this is how I'm going to get Tully into this conversation.
Okay,
he's also a musician. And Lou obviously is an EDM musician as well. I mean, the fact that music sort of slides around in the background, no matter where we are in the story and where we are in Vincent's life, I think is really great. One of the things I loved were the emails between Vincent and Tully and Vincent and Siobhan. And let's bring in Tully and Siobhan for a second, because this goes to something that Shannon says about the end of the book, which we'll get to, but this
I know.
idea that there's space for everyone. I love this, that there's space for everyone, that there isn't a cut and dry, that everyone's sort of got their own thing. And, you know, there's Baptiste and Agatha and Mina and whatever that, whoa, there are so many different permutations of family. Some are classical too, but can we talk about Tully and Siobhan for a second? Because they're really lovely. I'm very happy they're in this book.
Right. Thank you so much. I mean, I love how you put that. That's really beautiful and important, you know, and that's exactly what I was doing. So the biggest secret that Killian has been keeping is that he had a child when he was 15 with a young woman named Siobhan when he was living in Dublin. That child is Tully, and now Tully's in his 30s. He's had no contact with him. And so Vincent reaches out, and it was important that she would do that, really, because she's a woman, because she's a mom, because she's like, wow, if I had known, we want you in our life. And there was no way to kind of sneak around that. That's not who Vincent is. She would just outright just email him and be like, hey, I'm married to Killian. We never knew about you. Now we know about you. Hi. You know, and that's what she did. But then, you know, she is very gentle with Siobhan, who was only 15 at the time too. She asked Tully, is it okay for me to write your mom? Because I want to write your mom too, because, you know, Killian has hurt all of us, not just you all. And how do we make this work? I think it said so much about who Vincent is, because she's really hurt too. She's completely destroyed by this. They've been together for 25 years. But what now? And that's just life. That's how things happen in life. You find out these things, you just keep going, you figure it out. But I love the way you said there is space for them, because she is like, we have to make space for you in our life now. Not just have to, but we want to. You're so welcome here. But then very gently, how do we do that? Do you want to do that?
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, and Tully just as easily could have been like, no, thanks. No, you know, or, you know, cussed her out, you know, never written back. But she creaks open the door, and he's really like, hey, you know, I'm a grown man now, you know, my mom is really great. Yeah, I think she'd be fine with you writing her. And it kind of spirals out from there. It was really interesting for me, because when I started that, I didn't really know how it was going to go. I was just like, what's Tully like? And then I just ended up falling in love with all of them, of course. Yeah.
Shannon, do you have a moment that really surprised you as you were reading Half Blown Rose? Does anything stick out where you're just like, oh, not expecting that?
Not necessarily,
Mm-hmm.
just in like the shock, because
Right.
I felt connected to so many of the characters, and their decisions made sense to me. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I could see why they were reacting a certain way, why Tully would decide like, yes, I'm ready for a relationship like this. And why, as I got to know Vincent more, who I liked more and more as the novel went on, my original reaction was like, wow, she's really reacting really tough on, you know, like this is a lot. But then as I got to know her, and as I got to know her family and her life and her decisions, I was like, you know what, this makes a lot more sense that she would react this way, as I got to really understand her as a person through kind of all the different mediums that we connect with her on. So I really like that. And I like that the characters are representative of a very just contemporary modern approach to what a family could be or is in our relationships with other humans, without necessarily vilifying one person or another person. It's ultimately each person's decision about the relationship, and there's no black and white. It's kind of like this idea of liminal spaces we kind of referenced earlier, where there's so many different shades of our relationships with people, and there's no just the kind of one answer to like, I'm defining my person by being with this person.
Sure.
You know, it's much more about who you are as a character, not as in relation to everyone else. So yeah. I kind of, it was more about that for me, I think, than anything that really kind of to me, you know?
So I had one tiny moment, which I'm just saying it's going to bring my reading experience to the book, which is I thought, wow, Vincent and Killian are so young when they're settling down. They're in college. They're babies. What are they doing?
Yeah.
And listen, it's different for everyone, obviously. And, you know, but I did have a moment of, are they old enough to settle down?
Yeah,
but it does. It explains a lot of her response, though. When you spend your entire adult life with the person you think is your person.
Right.
That you have never questioned that this person is your spouse, partner, whatever word you want to put on it. And to suddenly realize that you didn't, no wonder she's responding the way she's responding. But yeah, that was my first moment. I was like, oh, wait a minute. I just did. Oh, their baby's having a baby because here's calm, and there's Olive, excuse me.
Yeah. No, you're exactly right. And that, like, I've said this before when I talk about the book, but if Killian had done right by what had happened to him, if he had told her about the child he'd had in Dublin and that he was here now, Vincent would have been fine with it. Tully would have been in their life. Vincent would have been like, let's go get him. Let's go see him. We love him. Let's make sure that he's a part of our family. And they would have been fine. If she and Killian had stayed together and he had stayed together from when they were in college to when, and then he didn't do this, they also would have been fine. She was not feeling like her life was lacking, really. She really wasn't. She was happy having their children, making her jewelry. Like, she's happy doing that. But then there's this, he drops this and that she has to figure out what to do with her life. So she really would have been happy. But now looking back, she's infuriated. And I just appreciate you all saying what you do say about her, because I find that people sometimes readers can be so hard on women in books and be like, well, she shouldn't do this or that. And I'm like, but dude, this is a pretty big deal. like she's upset right now. Like, give her a moment.
There's also a really interesting line that Killian at one point says to Vincent. He's like, you're so hard to know. And I'm looking at this guy. I'm looking at a fictional character on the page. But anyway, I'm giving him a hairy eyeball. I'm really giving him a stink eye because I'm like, well, the rest of us are really clear, dude. You're just not paying attention.
Yeah.
And I think that is, it can, when you're in a very long-term relationship, there are moments where you forget your person is your person. And I don't mean that in like you're going to step out on them way necessarily, but more in are you furniture or are you my person? And
exactly.
You get into routines and habits and suddenly you're just like, wait, this is my life. And it's interesting to me the way you sort of put them in, shall we say, parallel tracks. Yeah. And we will get to that. We're not there yet.
Right.
But I want to go back to this idea of liminal spaces, because the novel obviously is Vincent's liminal space. It is also her family's liminal space. They don't know it. I mean, she knows it, but they don't. But do either of you have a favorite liminal space?
Just in life.
Yeah.
I love trains.
Mine is trains too.
Just you're grounded, but you're moving. Like, it's just best case. You have more room than on a plane. I don't know. I love trains. I fall asleep to sleep stories describing getting on a train. Like, that is pure calm for me.
Yeah, mine is trains too. I gave my love for trains. I actually describe it in the book as I think she says a 3-year-old. I think Vincent said, she loves trains as much as a 3-year-old. I do too. I love trains. There's no train ride that's long enough for me. Even when we took trains across Europe, they would always be done. They're always over too fast for me. So yeah, I wish I was on a train. I wish we could be talking about this on a train right now.
I would not complain. I have to say, I do love trains, but for me, it's literally walking onto a plane, and I realize I'm saying that in a pandemic, but that is the moment where I'm just like, I am happy as a pig in mud just walking onto a plane, which maybe not the best metaphor. Sorry if anyone works for the airlines, but I love that idea of being able to move without necessarily moving yourself.
Yeah.
It's really kind of great. But I have another question for you guys. Vincent has a moment where she talks about the difference between being alone and being lonely. And obviously literature allows us to be alone and not feel lonely. So let's take ourselves out of that for a moment. Do you think, though, that she's telling the truth? Do you think she's really, because it seems to me there are moments where she's not quite entirely telling herself the truth about being alone and being lonely, and it shows up in different relationships. But what do you think?
I mean, really, in that moment when she says that, she is being honest, although I do hear what you're saying. There are all sorts of unspoken things. I really, you know, I have her talk about early on that she gets to be just Vincent there and not mom Vincent or wife Vincent or even sister Vincent. And a lot of that just comes, my children are teenagers now, and my oldest just turned 18. And there is, you know, there's so much more freedom that I have now to where I'm not just always mom. I used to always be their name mom, instead of like my real name, which, you know, all moms get that. But yeah, she needs that space. Now, whether that space always translates to happy feelings or happy thoughts, but it does for her. Really, she needs that space. I would say 99.999% of the time, she really does. So she's being honest with herself there. But I am, you know, next time I read it, I'll be thinking about what you said to see what I think. Yeah.
I mean, I love her. I think she's a terrific character, but she's also very human. And there are a couple of moments too. There's another moment too where, you know, she's saying to Killian, and I think it's in a conversation that she's recounting, if I have this straight, it's sort of around 2/3 of the way into the book, where she just looks at him and says, you know, a huge part of your life is a lie. And she's not wrong, but his errors of omission are really interesting to me, given the choices that she continues to make while she's in Paris. So before we get to the ending,
I'm gonna say I love that she took that track, because it's kind of like she is deciding who she is, again, not in relation to whatever her husband did. But it's just kind of, or who her kids are, or, you know, where she is. It's kind of just like she is her own person, and Lou is a great asset to getting her there, but he is not. Like, I felt like it was her making those decisions and her driving the change in her life. Because I think at a surface level, you can just be like, this is you know, there's a love triangle, there's two men, who's she gonna choose?
Right.
But I think that the idea that it's so much more than that, because it doesn't have to be framed with the men involved. You know, it can really just be who she is as a woman, just, you know, kind of being reborn in this next stage of her life, which is what I just so appreciated.
Yeah, and where she is in her life. I think where is also a really important moment, because I'm not sure this book could have happened outside of Paris. I think Paris is too important, and I think the way Vincent views Paris is too important. And also, I mean, wouldn't it be nice if everyone's parents had an apartment in Paris that they could crash land at? I mean, that's delightful. And also parents with taste. Oh, how fabulous. But really, though, that is one of the things I really appreciate with this character in this particular storyline, where she's like, hey, wait a minute. I'm here in the moment. I'm trying to figure out what this means. You know, the fact that she doesn't remember to extend her visa tells me that she is absolutely in the moment. She's not thinking about the future. She's just thinking about how do I put one foot in front of the other? How do I keep myself grounded? That's not something you always see in a love story.
Right. No, and I think it's really interesting that you said that about her visa, because I had issues with that, because I'm like, and Vincent is really on top of it. I was like, I really don't, you know, am I sure that she would let that go? But then I was like, she's got a lot going on right now. And I just think it adds to her being human. You know, things are a little bit messy. They do. When she leaves to go back to, right before she leaves to go back to her son Colin's wedding in New York, things with Baptiste are kind of weird, because his wife, you know, his wife is Lou's cousin, and she doesn't like them together. And then things with that get sort of weird, although not weird at all. But Vincent is just doing all of this work like in her head, really. And so yeah, I really, you know, I wanted to make the ending sort of messy. I use that word messy in a positive way, and also in a really relatable way, because we're all humans here. But yeah, when I'm thinking, when people say, oh, it's a love triangle, or it's about her choosing between the two men, it just is absolutely not about her choosing between the two men. And that's the reason I absolutely refused to have an ending that I knew some people would want. Oh, never. I was never going to do that. It's just real rejection of that feeling that I'm literally rejecting the idea that it was about her choosing between the men, because they can really figure it out. She's going to do what she wants to do.
Did you know this was going to be the ending? Yeah, sorry, Shannon, I didn't mean to step on you there, but did you know this is how the book had to end?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I thought, because it just felt so organic
Right.
to Vincent, and just like absolutely not at all impulsive or anything. It was just like, yeah, of course, this is how it's going to be. And you can see the markers. You
Right.
can see the markers going through, and you can see her story arc and her development. I want to take a moment and throw in a question here from Denise, who's also saying, "The end!" exclamation point. So did Vincent's son write this about Vincent's life? Did she write the screenplay, or was this entire book a movie? Love it! Exclamation point.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for your question. Yeah, no one is writing this book, and no, and I wouldn't say the entire book's not a movie. It's just more like so I was watching a lot of French film. I just love French movies, and so I really wanted. The book isn't quite metafiction in the way that it's constantly referencing itself as a work or as a book. But, I dropped we have a screenplay on the very first page. I wanted the reader to know that this is the kind of story it's going to be, meaning that there are moments, because Vincent's in this liminal space, that she's like, wow, this is kind of like a movie. And it's like, I wanted to get across that same feeling you have when you do step on the airplane and you step off in a new city. You don't feel real. You're like, wow, this is weird. I'm in a new spot. This is kind of weird. She's having those moments. So the screenplay is her dropping into those moments like, wow, this is sort of weird. So it's at the beginning, and then it happens throughout the book, when she sees Lou walk out of the club after he's been playing, when she sees Colin when she sees Killian for the first time, when she's back in New York. And then at the end, I have it happen in these really specific spots where she's almost dissociating in a way, because things are changing so much, or she's having these overwhelming feelings. So no, I wasn't having someone actually write her version of Half Blown Rose, but then again, my book is called Half Blown Rose, and Killian's book is called Half Blown Rose. And I also have Vincent mention the baby at the end is their Half Blown Rose. So then I am referring to that over and over again. If someone thought this was Vincent's version of events, they wouldn't be wrong, but it was not a literal, they're writing the book, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's talk about your influences, Leesa, because let's face it, you've mentioned the Brontes throughout this book. And even at one point, I love this, Vincent says, now she's living in a Bronte book.
Right. It's all of a sudden Wuthering Heights. Yeah.
Right, exactly. So, we've got Jane Eyre, and you do also mention Stephen King and Baldwin, Anna Karenina, Madame Bovary, Wuthering Heights. So let's talk about you as a reader and your development. And then we're going to hit Shannon up too.
Yeah, so I speak often about being a Janeite. I'm a proper member of the Jane Austen Society of North America, and I love the Brontes, and I just love the classics. It's what I went to school for, and I don't think that I can even write anything without referencing those women. Really, I just love them and adore them and their way of storytelling, and they're strong women, and the way they do have love stories, but the women also have other things going on in their lives, and all the feelings that you get in a Bronte book, all the feelings that you get in Jane Austen, you get every feeling. It's funny and sad, and people are grieving, but then they're also really romantic and mysterious and sort of scary sometimes, and all these different things happen. And so I'm always trying to put that sort of stuff, those things into my work. I'm heavily influenced by women writing women who are really independent and strong, and that's who Vincent is. Vincent is really independent and strong, and that's what plays into the ending. That's the reason I knew that I could stick an ending like that, because it's Vincent. If there was another character, maybe not, but I think a reader who's reading that from beginning to end and really feeling that knows that whatever happens, Vincent's going to be okay, because we see what happened and she's okay because of it. But yeah, so those are obviously and clearly some of my literary influences I can't really get away from. And the fact that I made Killian a writer in here, it's just like, there's always going to be something about books, or always something about writers, because Killian's a writer, Vincent's in love with a writer. She constantly loves to, she reads, she's such a, big reader herself too.
Okay, Shannon, I know you love Greek mythology. I know that's the thing that makes your heart go pitter patter. But where are you on the Bronte Austen Wuthering Heights scale?
I reread Pride and Prejudice every year.
Okay.
So pretty high up there because they were definitely, I think, as soon as I realized, and I wish even, I studied classic mythology and classic poetry, and some of the best poets were women. And as soon as I kind of was anchored in kind of classic English literature, and that's when I really honed in on the female perspective as just being so important and so sometimes marginalized still today, just for, just a love story. And it never is, because the, majority of critics are men, not to get on my feminist soapbox, but I think those are the books that really shape, when you're a reader and you're growing up, that's how you can really learn and, be in situations that you haven't been in yourself and see how they relate to men and, managers and people in their lives that they have to contend with and figure out the best way forward while still being true to themselves. And, Austen and Bronte and all of them make me, they made me excited to read. And obviously I've been reading ever since. But it's kind of those, you start with the classics and you realize it's, we've got the same problems, just in different packaging every generation.
I want to switch. Oh, for me? So my taste is wildly broad. And I mean, I hold Morrison and Baldwin and, Maxine Hong Kingston in a place very tightly. I was really lucky that I had the run of the library. I had a little rebellious moment where my parents kept trying to get me to read Austen and Wuthering Heights and all of that kind of stuff. And I said, no, thank you. So I was a little late to that party. I understand it now and I do appreciate it. But, when I was a teenager and they were like, no, really, you need to read this. I was like, yeah, I'm good, thanks. Yeah. So what I do love is that these stories keep working for everyone and that they drive so much conversation still, and that we use them for so much inspiration, and that, in fact, they connect us to who we were and where we're going. Because, I mean, honestly, people are kind of sometimes very predictable. I mean, it's fun when they're not, but it's also nice to be able to relate to characters who may not share that exact same story that you have. And I personally, as a reader, love looking for the truth in the details of someone else's life. And it's like, oh, right, okay, I get who you are. And that to me is all of the fun. But hey, Leesa, I have a question for you from Megan Kleinhans. What is your writing process like?
So when I'm working on a book, I just am working every day on the book. It's just like I'm just really writing for 8 to 10 hours, really, if I'm working on a book. Whenever I get this question, I feel like my answer is kind of like, I just work on it for 8 or 10 hours until I get it done. It's not really, it's not really cute or exciting, really. It's just, my job. So I'm just working on it until I get it done. So I just get up in the morning and work, and there's a bit of, obsession that has to happen for me to be able to finish a book. I have to lock myself away when I get to the end, meaning I have to actually like go into a room and shut the doors. That's the only thing I'm doing, really. It's the only thing I'm thinking about. It's until I get it done.
Do you miss these characters? I mean, it's been a minute since you finished this book.
I don't miss them because they're mine, and I think about her all the time, and I know, I think about what she's doing now, and so no, I don't miss them, but it's because they're mine. But I understand the question. If they weren't mine, I would. Yeah.
Was there a moment, I mean, I realize you just said you basically sit for 8 to 10, you do the work. I mean, essentially that's what you just said. You do the work. Right. But was there any point during the writing of Half Blown Rose where you just said, oh, that's quite excellent. Like, that's exactly the thing that needs to happen? Or are you one of those people who goes back and just keeps chipping away at the revisions and the rewriting and the editing as you go kind of thing?
Maybe both. Yeah. I always, I outline. So I knew, I knew almost everything that was going to happen in the book before I even started writing. But then there are little treats along the way, enough to keep me excited. And then, I mean, I do just keep going back through it. It's like, I don't want someone who's just beginning their writing career and really like wanting to be like inspired as an artist to feel to listen to someone, listen to an artist and think that it's all inspiration. It's all just artistic vision and inspiration. That's some of it, but some of it is just me knowing, oh, okay, now I need them to do this. Now I need them to do that. And it's not really like exciting or special. Those moments are, it's just like, I have to build this framework. And then, I would think about like a house, the framework, I have to get some things done, the foundation. And then of course we can decide what color we want to paint, what kind of tile we want for the kitchen. But really, I mean, I need to make sure the house doesn't fall down. And so it's like, a lot of times it's just the work part of it. And then, yeah, when I can go back through, when I've gotten, I can go, okay, I got that stuff done. Then I can make Lou's shorts shorter. I can change a song here. I can have her put on red lipstick instead of pink. I can do those things that are a lot more fun, but I have to do the other parts of it first.
So Vincent clearly showed up first. Who showed up after that? Like, what was the order of people?
Well, it was Vincent and then it was Lou.
Okay.
So yeah, and actually when I first wrote, it was a short story at first, as the short story is actually in the paperback version of my short story collection, So We Can Glow. And so at first, it was just Vincent and Lou, and there was no Killian. It was just a story about Vincent and Lou. So it was just going to be about Vincent meeting Lou and deciding that she was interested in him. But that can be quite boring, because what would be holding her back, right? Well, how about if Lou is the same age as her son, the son that she has with a man called Killian, who has just done this or that. And so it kind of bled out from there. But it was Vincent and Lou, and then also Baptiste, he was born on the exact same day as Vincent, and they just had an instant connection. And I just fell in love with him immediately. He's very important. He's married to Lou's cousin, and he's very important to her life over there. He is this voice that's constantly like, get it, girl. All right, do it. Okay. And she's just like, can you stop? But she loves him, and they love each other. And he's like always gassing her up, even when she doesn't want to be gassed up. And so, yeah. So in the very beginning of the book, we meet Vincent, Lou, and Baptiste immediately. And that's the order they came to me.
That's so excellent. Laura Fraser is asking, will there be a sequel or another book with some of the same characters? And in parentheses, loved them all.
Thank you so much. No. And it's so nice when people ask me that. I think people are asking me that because of the ending, but no, they're there for anyone to revisit, but I won't be writing about them again.
Shannon, do you have a favorite moment, favorite character? I mean, what's the thing that really stuck with you after you finished Half Bone Rose? I mean, you've alluded to a bunch of different things, but like, what's the thing, the biggest thing?
I don't know if it's because I want to date him, but I love Lou. Like, I loved him as a character the entire time. I think he kind of loves with his whole heart and just jumps into things and is just, I loved him.
Well, thank you, because you know what? I really love him too. And I want to say that like it was a deliberate point on my part too. And I have Vincent talk about this, but Lou is not a dark character. He's not a dark, and you run a risk with a writer, because I know people, as a writer, because I know people love these books where, but he has this really, really dark past and people are waiting for this dark past to be exposed. But no, he doesn't. He's really just a sweetheart. He really just likes her. He's a sweetheart. He really is just chill and by no means perfect, but he's not that character. She didn't need that character at that point in her life. She didn't need some guy that had this dark past. She would have been like, no, she would have not have been interested. He really is just sunshine. She has to figure out what to do with that sunshine, I mean, there are moments where she's like, it's kind of cloying. Like he's doing handstands in my apartment. Please, can you sit still for 1 second? So she does have those moments where she's sort of rolling, actually literally rolling her eyes at him. But I needed him to be that guy who was he's just great.
I also really appreciated the contrast between him and being able to talk about his emotions and pick at stuff. I mean, given what she's coming away from with Killian, where the dude could not tell her the whole story, and here we are. And now she's got this kid, and watching her kind of struggle with a kid who actually has language for things where can't you imagine that she wanted Killian to be able to say these things, and now she's got this kid who's 24, the same age as her son, who also can talk about these things. I mean, we're talking about a really significant generational shift. It's pretty cool to watch her navigate that space too, where she's like, this is what I wanted.
Right. She does. No, you're exactly right. And then also, I wanted to make sure that she was really honest about the fact that she just thinks he's sexy and wants to kiss him, and she thinks he's hot and she loves his body. Like the female gaze was really important to me. Like her physical desire for him is huge, and she fights it for a while. I mean, she goes there in July, and they don't kiss until November. He doesn't even come over until October. So this has been months where she's like, here he comes, his shorts are getting shorter and his hair is just falling across his face. And she really is like fighting this because she is still married and all. But I also wanted to make sure that she was being honest with herself about her physical attraction to him, because that's super important to her. It was surprising to her, and she didn't want to ignore it. He wasn't going to let her ignore it either. And she leans into that, and I always let my female characters lean into that, because let's just lean into that.
And also, let's be honest, Vincent's breaking the cycle. I mean, she's saying, no, I'm going to bring him to Tuscany. I want him to come to Tuscany. We're going to have this conversation as a family, and I can only imagine what the responses are. And you know what? We've hit the 3:45 mark. I don't know how we got here so quickly. This is, I would rather just stay here with you women and just hang out and keep talking about this book. But we're at the 3:45 mark. There's one question from an anonymous person that I'm going to answer really quickly. We are doing in-person book clubs depending on the store. So just reach out to your local B&N and ask them if they're doing events. But it's a case-by-case basis. Come fall, we're going to start doing something new with the book club. But we'll have more news for you guys at some point. Shannon, as always, I'm happy to see your face. Leesa, this was awesome. Thank you so much for writing this book. This was so much fun. And thank you, everyone, for joining the Barnes & Noble Book Club again. And actually, just a reminder, too, if you're going to join us for tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow, that book club event is July 28th. Instead of the beginning of August, we're doing it at July 28th. We'll be online. Come hang out. Gabrielle Zevin was as fun as Leesa. So please, it's really going to be great to see you guys. And thanks again, everyone. So have a great afternoon.
Thank you.
Thanks, Leesa.
Bye.